record. All right, go ahead.
Cool. Hiya, I'm Joanna Walden, and this is Your Superior Self.
That's perfect. Joanna, thank you so much for joining the show. I'm very excited to talk to you because I just got to reading your first book and trilogy of books, The Inside Hustle. Very fantastic storytelling. It's a memoir. It's fascinating. It's true story. Thank you for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
Um, so you've lived a quite incredible life. What inspired this book? Like was somebody like you've have so many great stories. You have lived an amazing life so far. Like you need to write this down in a book. Like how did that come about?
No, well, for starters, my background is traditionally in advertising. So I was living and working in advertising in New Zealand and then in New York and London. And I just wasn't really deeply fulfilled within that career, even though I was pretty good at it. And, it's fun. It was like really great. I wouldn't change it for the world. But there was this niggling feeling within me that it wasn't really what I was here to do. And I wanted something that was going to deeply satisfy my soul. And so it literally set me off on a journey to investigate what that was and figure it out. And so the book part of it, I started going on these adventures to try and figure out for myself. And it really began with the Camino to Santiago, the hike on the ancient pilgrim path through the north of Spain. And I'd read this Shirley MacLaine book, and she'd had all these amazing spiritual experiences and these amazing shifts and changes, and she basically like had the experience of the universe itself and all this like really out there stuff. And I was like, I want to go and do what Shirley's done. I want to get the answers. I want to go and get zapped by this amazing ley lines through the Milky Way that like corresponds with this pilgrim path. And when I did it, I started just writing. I mean, I've always been writing like my whole time, lots of diaries, all that kind of stuff. But I was writing my adventures every day. And this was before the days of social media. So I was emailing it out to like my email list. And people were giving such a great response to these little stories, these vignettes that I was sending of my experiences on the Camino. And I got a lot of like, you should write a book. This should totally be a book. I've been reading it out to my friends and colleagues at work and whatever. And it's really funny. And so that kind of probably planted a seed in my mind, but
Sure.
It didn't eventuate until years later when I literally was just sort of like sidestepping around the advertising industry with different bits and facets of it, not really finding it out, doing a whole bunch of research and training and holistic therapy and all sorts of different more kind of personal development techniques on the side, still not kind of landing on it. So then I was like, well, I'm just going to go and write this book because I don't really know what else to do.
Well, you were in that was your field then. You're very spiritual. Like what are you doing now? Like besides kick-ass author, what is your profession now?
Well, so I'm a transformation coach now.
Okay.
So, and funnily enough, I mean, I've used everything that I've understood and developed along my own journey, because I had a lot of like getting in my own way, stuff not working for me, doing all the things that people said and it just not working and not really understanding why. And so I felt like I went down quite a few little rabbit holes in the personal development, spiritual communities that didn't really help me. And that was part of the reason why I wrote the book, to help other people not do that and just to shed a bit of light on that. But also, I guess that's just what I'm most passionate about. I've been doing that stuff all my life. And so funnily enough, though, the way I work with the system now, transformation, was inspired by my advertising career and the way that we were disruptively using strategy with clients. So I started this principle of disrupting people's kind of energy patterns within themselves based on my advertising training. Funnily enough, I never would have thought that would come to be, but there you go.
So I'm becoming more spiritual. I am very open-minded to meditation and trying to channel that higher self, that higher consciousness. I'm a big believer in energy, as you are too, right? I mean, just from the book. And some of the experiences are pretty intense. Can you talk about like, the most intense experience that you've had thus as far as like, reaching that higher self or having like an intense meditation or experience where you felt like you connected with that higher self?
Yeah. I had an experience when I was in Brazil, and I was at a very controversial kind of spiritual retreat center called John of God. But despite all of the sort of like controversy around that whole, I was having my own experience. I was very much in my own development there. And I was going, and you do these daily meditations, well, it's about 3 days a week when the casa was open. And I mean, these are deep diving into meditation. I mean, sometimes you're there from anywhere up to sort of 7 hours at a time. And there were times when I started to understand the different energies that were coming in and working with us. So I could sort of start to pick it out, like before they even told us who was in. And I started experiencing some incredibly high frequency energies that I can only describe as sort of the most incredible unconditional love of eternity that we are, that came through. And all I would do, I just cry. I mean, all you can do is cry. It's something beyond almost description and beyond almost emotion, but it was just flooding out of me. I just felt this really, really intense and amazing sense of just almost being like embraced by this universal loving energy. And so, those experiences, yeah, things like that, when it's a state of being that completely flips you out of whatever's going on with you on this level, is really something that you don't really forget. Um, and I think that is really connecting with that amazing, expansive part of ourself that really we have access to all the time, but we're just not connecting with it, not tuning into it. And it definitely comes from going inwards, especially connecting into the heart center, I think. Yeah.
Do you help your clients connect with that? Do you
Yeah.
share them the way of how to do that? Like, what is usually, one of the reasons why we're not connecting? Is it because of all the noise? Is it because we don't trust ourselves?
I mean, I can't tell you how many of my clients come to me, and one of the questions is, do you trust yourself? And they're all like, yep. Everyone straight away, yep. And every single client I find out as we go through, there's no trust there. They're doing all these behaviors that don't demonstrate trust in themselves. But it's really funny. We all think that we trust ourselves, and we actually don't. And so the way that we think and feel and operate based on that, just kind of subconscious program and running in the background, is not really helping us. And yes, that's one big thing that takes us away from ourselves.
Mm.
And our connection. And I think also, we've been conditioned into the society, where everything is more important than this relationship inside. It's all out, exterior focused. And we've been pushed to be programmed out of the mind, and that this is where the key the key is for everything and to make stuff happen. And I just don't find that to be true anymore,
Yeah.
So
I think
yeah.
it's I don't know. I think it's just the trust part. I mean, it's hard. Like we think we want to trust ourselves. We just think that we're doing it wrong because we compare ourselves to everyone else. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, so
Mhm.
I see Joanna's success, and I'm like, that's success. That's where I want to be, but I don't know how to get there. I don't know what that looks like for Trey. And it's like I try to do different things to make that or get that success, and it's just not amounting it to anything. So it's like you're doing it wrong. But it's
Right.
not right because I'm not doing it my way. I'm not trusting the process for myself. I'm trying to recreate somebody else's path, essentially. And
So that is one of the big ways we get flipped out. And I think where a lot of us are really following misdirections because it's just been conditioned into the way that we live. But that is one of the hugest things I find. And when I got led throughout all of this stuff to heart technology, that's when I was like, oh, hold on a minute. If we were actually all operating out of our heart technology the whole time, we would never be having these problems, and we would never be leading ourselves astray or whatever. But it's, the funny thing is that even all the times that I doubted myself, even I look back at that now and I thought I was off path, and it was actually incredibly ridiculously perfect the whole time.
hmm, even when you swapped a Brazilian boyfriend for a Brazilian girlfriend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to me about that. Like,
So
Like, how did I mean, you just crack me up because you in this whole entire book, it just cracks me up. Like, you go through these exotic things, right? Like, you were in 9/11 in New York and during 9/11, which is an experience, which it could be one book. But then you go on this crazy spiritual hike, Camino de Santiago, and through Spain, and then you go climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and then now we're discussing you swapping a Brazilian boyfriend for a Brazilian girlfriend. I mean, so
Well,
I was gonna talk about some other stuff, and then I just remembered that, and I was like, okay, we got to hit on that.
well, funnily enough, when you meet someone in spiritual retreat, it's kind of like meeting someone in rehab, and you probably shouldn't really go
You guys still talk?
there. Yeah, here and there. But that was the Brazilian boyfriend, not the girlfriend.
Okay.
So when it was a funny period for me because my father had just passed away not long before that. I'd come home after being in South America to get more stories for the writing of this book and had some pretty crazy experiences, like in Brazil with a trance channel medium who was slicing people open on stage and pulling tumors out of people under spiritual anesthetic. And then, like in Argentina, like the crazy shaman who would commune with ETs in spaceship 3 times a week when they'd come in on like a Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I was like, and he talks to these interdimensional beings in a mountain. Like, I mean, it was just, there was really some quite, I mean, it's basically, I could have been writing fiction. Everyone sort of says that, but it's really nonfiction. So, but by the time I got home to New Zealand, right when I got home and I had brought the Brazilian boyfriend with me, my dad got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and 12 weeks to live. And that was extended out a little bit through some natural therapies to sort of lasting 6 months. But that was that whole year was pretty intense on so many different levels. And I don't think, had I not gone and done all that spiritual work beforehand, I would have been able to handle it as well as I did. But I, not long after he actually passed away, it was about 6 months later, I think. And I just think, I kept bumping into this girl, and I had actually been, I'd actually been having an experience while my dad was dying with this young, like 27-year-old ex-Royal Marine commander. I was kind of fucking the pain away, I'm not gonna lie. And but it was kind of fun at the same time. And it turned out he actually had a girlfriend, but they were in an open relationship. So then I was sort of being invited to partake in that relationship with them, and then it never really happened because I think I just got a bit frustrated with the whole situation. And then so it was sort of like this carrot that was dangled, and then I never went there. And then cut to, enter stage left for the Brazilian girlfriend because I don't, it was because I'd had that unfulfilled thing with the couple. And then she, being someone who'd always had relationships with men and women, came in, and, we were sort of on the search for a guy to have this experience with. But it never really happened. And I realized that what she really wanted was me. And I ended up in this relationship with her. And I'm not even, like, I've never been bisexual or whatever label people want to put on it these days. There's so many I can't keep up. But, I was always very open, but it wasn't something I was like super, I've never been really naturally attracted to girls or anything like that. But this was very much a soul, something going on a soul level. And I had to dive into the deepest, darkest parts of me, and it was a huge trigger for my self-doubt. It was a huge trigger for me really trusting myself, funnily enough. It was like this, all of the work I'd been doing on everything came up into this experience to really challenge me on all the different levels where I thought I was like, kind of, like, oh yeah, I'm great with that now. And I knew in my heart that it was a soul experience. So even though for me, the sexual side of the relationship wasn't really kind of where I wanted it to be, there was so many other factors that we were working through. And I was in love with her as a person. I just wasn't incredibly sexually attracted to her like I've been with other lovers. So
Mhm.
I continued on it because I knew I had to, it was like I had to do it. I just knew inside that that's what I had to do for a while. And so I went with it and I explored it, and I opened up doors to parts of myself that I never knew were in there. And I opened up some of the deepest, darkest shadows that were lying around, and was confronted with a whole ton of stuff about me and, old things from years and years ago at school with, worried about people judging you and all that kind of, it was really, really old stuff that was coming out to be cleared. So it was a fascinating experience, and I definitely wouldn't change it for the world. But it's something, I mean, that came out of left field for me. That really did. And I guess I was blown open by my dad dying anyway. So it
Sure.
was like, it just
Yeah.
kind of, it went on from that. So it was one of those things that, I mean, I think it takes a bit of guts to do that when part of you is like, oh, this is not quite right, but I almost know I have to do this for a level that's bigger than my human experience right here, because I was understanding it from a completely other energetic level. And so,
That's beautiful. I think that's great. I think
yeah,
that it is like you said, like you're experiencing, or you're going to the deepest, darkest part of yourself, and you're finally seeing yourself, right? And getting to know that source of who you are, and to deal with that. I mean, I'm joking, I joke with you, but it's like very, very beautiful, right? Like it's very, I mean, that's that's just part of the story that I really was like, man, that's interesting. Like that just, that's just amazing. But then like another part that I wanted to talk to you about was like you talked about your dad dying,
mm,
and like there was a part in your book where you were like he asked you or something, like if he, was it like he asked you if he was going to make it or something, or something like, and then
yeah,
you knew that he wasn't going to make it. And I wanted to ask you, like, how did you know that? Like, why did you know that?
because I felt his, basically he said to me, we were sitting there and he said, do you think I can really do this? Do you, and then I just knew he wasn't going to make it, because if he was doubting himself and he didn't know if he was going to make it, if could he really make it, I just knew that it was over. Like, and I just knew that he was in a place mentally and emotionally that he was already kind of checked out, and I didn't think that really anything was going to be able to save him, and I kind of just knew that
Hmm.
inherently within my being.
Wow.
But it's hard when your dad is standing there asking you if and he's like your hero, and he's like I mean, he was an amazing character. He was very sort of like, semi-famous in the advertising world here in New Zealand. That's how I ended up in advertising, being around it. And I mean, I think the golden days of that industry were in the 70s and 80s, but it was still a very, very fun place to work. And he was a huge character around town. He was just very, very enigmatic and powerful and caring and generous. And so, when that hero who's always known what to do and has always led the charge and has always got the solution to any problem is sitting there telling you, questioning if you think that he can do it, then, my world just crumbled.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. And you said it was 6 months after that he passed. 6 months after that.
yeah, yeah,
That's pretty tough. Do you
yeah.
ever do you ever seek, like, connect with him from on the other side? Are you able to do that? Do you go to, like, do you seek that out? Like, I've been really, not, I guess, researching, or just kind of like just experiencing stuff for myself, like going on these guided meditations, and like, having, I don't know if you've read Christina Rasmussen, who is I think she's the author of Where Did You Go, where you can actually do these meditations, and or is it her? Anyway, she lost her husband, and she has a great book out, and you're able to go basically in the non-physical, non-form reality, and contact them and have conversations, and like it feels real. Like, I mean, I have definitely been able, and she teaches this. It's crazy. It's like you're able to bring things back with you, and manifest it into the physical. Like, it's crazy. Have you done any of that?
So I've done sort of similar kind of things. I haven't heard about her specifically, but I have
You
to
need to
check
check
it out.
her out. Check
Yeah,
her
I
out.
mean, I love all that stuff. It's like totally my
I
jam.
know you do. I've read your book. I know who you are. I feel like I've known you for
Yeah, I
years.
know, right? But yes, I had some experiences. He's visited me a couple of times, and I've smelt the cigar smoke. And he used to smoke a lot of cigars. And I remember not long after he passed away that I smelt cigar smoke where I was in my bedroom, And I'm sort of thinking, oh my God, the neighbor's having a party or something, you know, like there's all this smoke. Why is it so smoky in here? And I went to the windows and they were all shut. I was like, hold on a minute. And then I realized that he was visiting me, and that's happened a few times, the cigar smoke when I'm in bed. It's always when I'm in bed, I guess, just going to sleep, that I get visited. But, you know, I also feel his energy around, and I do tune into him and have conversations and ask him questions and ask him how to do stuff and be like, I need some help here. You got to help me with my mother. She's really hard right now, you know.
Well, how's she doing? How's your mom doing?
She's doing kind of the same as she ever was. It's been a pretty up and down with her ever since ever, really, you know. So, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think when you lose a partner of 40 years, that's going to be really, really hard for any person.
Absolutely. Well, how are you doing? I mean, you've had this amazing journey. You've had this up and down, like from darkness to light, you know, incredible, incredible journey. Is there, you know, is there someone you're hanging out with? Is there, you know, have you found that New Zealand boyfriend? What is it looking like for you?
So right now it took a lot, like it's almost like I had to birth my book first to free up my energy, because it is an incredibly energetic book. It's definitely laid with energy, and I hear readers come back to me saying, wow, I've had this shift and change, Joe. Oh my God, I feel more connected to myself than ever before. Wow, I feel like I can actually stop searching, because you just sort of like highlighted a ton of stuff that I was going down these rabbit holes that I don't need to do anymore. And so there was that was really hard on multiple levels, because I was birthing something that was really, really intimate and close to myself, and it's about my story and the deepest, darkest stuff, as you know, a lot in there. And that's really hard to go over and over and write out again. And then also just the energy that was coming through while I was writing it, I didn't have a lot of control over it, but it was also very all encompassing. And so during that time, I was with the Brazilian girlfriend, and then that was quite an intense experience for me, and I needed some downtime. And so then I haven't been looking out for that kind of thing, and I've been so focused on my book and my business that I sort of feel like I'm kind of ready now to start sort of like opening my eyes to a few things. But, yeah, I just feel like everything is happening in the right space around me, and I don't really feel the need to sort of push and find and seek anymore, because it seems to just have its own timeline that needs to happen when it happens, and it's not really controlled by me. If there's anything that I realized, I mean, I honestly wanted to birth this book like 2 years ago, and it wouldn't happen. And I kept getting challenge after challenge. And even when I got to the editing process, that took twice as long. And then the proofreading, they lost all the changes and had to start all over again. And just some quite funny things were happening with the timing of this book. And then funnily enough, it was right at the first lockdown last year in March that suddenly this whole COVID thing was hitting off. And suddenly this book was ready to go. And I was like, this is weird. And it wasn't the launch I was planning. I was planning on launching it in a couple of months in a big old event and did the traditional way. And I was just like, I got to get this out there now. And I realized that this timing, if I'd launched it 2 years ago, it probably never would have impacted people so deeply as the people who've read it so far, because everyone is in this period where they're really reevaluating everything about life. They're really much more open to new information, to a different way of living, to really looking at their old life and being like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore, and this doesn't work in this current environment, so how's that going to change? Mm-hmm. So it was fascinating that it happened to be ready right for that. And and then I felt like a lot of the energy was released with me actually just getting it out there. So now I'm just working on that, and I'm doing a workbook off the back of it and all sorts of stuff to help people through the process of transformation that came out of all of this, basically. So
yeah. Well, how nervous were you when this came out? Like, I mean, this is, like you said, this is pretty intense. Like, were you confident? What did that look like?
Oh no, are you crazy? I mean,
did you just hide in your house? I mean, what did you do? I mean, obviously you were locked down, but
literally 2 days after it went live, and it went live as an ebook first. I literally called my friend having a meltdown, being like, I don't want to do this. I need to take it back. I'm not going to do this anymore. I was like, what am I doing? And, it's hilarious because I had the freak out after I'd already launched it, which is absolutely ridiculous. But, my mum had a meltdown because she features in the book quite a lot. And, I really had to talk her around because some of it she did take kind of personally. And I had to explain that this was, a certain time of my life. I was going through these things and those feelings, and that wasn't what it was for me in the present moment. But, it's hard because I wanted to be true to my feeling in the story, and I didn't want to have to change it to make other people feel okay, and even myself. And that was the hardest part because I really am quite revealing in this book, and it is.
No, not at all. Not at
I
all.
mean, pretty raw and authentic. So, but people have. I tell you what, Brené Brown was really right about that whole vulnerability thing because it's really connected with people because everyone can see parts of themselves in the story, whether they're men or women or what their jam is and what's been going on. There's
Sure.
just a lot of universal kind of truths that we all go through as a human, and so that connects with people. And being so honest, people aren't usually so honest about the inner workings of what's up here and the craziness that goes on. I think that's really important.
Well, when people see you, do they like? I feel like I know you so well. Like, right? Do they just come up to you and just start, talking to you like they've known you forever? Like, I just feel like that's
Yeah,
just a common thing.
a little bit.
Yeah, they're
It's
just
kind of
like,
funny.
hey, remember that Tommy? Remember that
Yeah.
boyfriend, girlfriend? I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, the healer stuff is pretty intense. Like, what did you leave out in this book? Like, I want to know that. Like, what did you leave out? Like, because I mean, it's pretty intense.
I mean, gosh, there's so much that got left out. You just can't fit everything in a book like this. And, I would have lost the reader so many times had I put everything in there. And I needed to make it I needed to bring it back to something that would, be relevant to everybody and also was following some kind of journey. Some of it was like crazy all over the show. I mean, it needed to make sense, but, I guess there's a lot of stuff that I did in between some of those, and some of the timelines have been switched around because otherwise it would have been confusing. But I had to leave out like all of Egypt and stuff, so it's probably for the next book, to be honest with you.
I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, and there's just tons. So I just, whatever didn't go in, it's going into the next one. So don't worry.
Talk about so I feel like we're very similar because I was telling you before air, I'm on that same spiritual path. So like that trying to find the one, oneself, finding that higher self. What is the purpose here? Like why am I here? I'm on this rotating ball in space,
Yeah.
with a bunch of other people. And it seems like we're not here just to have a 9 to 5, work for the weekends, or it's like what am I here for? Did you ever figure that out for yourself?
For me, it kind of changes as I evolve, to be totally honest with you. And that's what I was referring back to a quote the other day. It's like about truth, because everyone wants to like hang on to something as an absolute truth all the time, and truth changes and evolves as well, and it may be a contradiction, but it's still truth. And there's things that people have thought of absolute that have ebbed and changed. I mean, science is in a constant state of evolution as well. Everything really is. We all are. Nature is. And so with that, my understanding keeps sort of expanding, or keeps almost kind of neutralizing itself in a way, because I just feel like it changes day to day with what's been coming up and what messages I'm getting. And part of me is just like, you don't need to figure any of this out, Joe. And that's kind of a red herring in the whole thing.
Mm.
And, it's actually better, in order to be the most magnificent version of yourself that you can be, is shining your inner light the strongest, and so we don't do that, and we've been conditioned out of that, and so when we do that, we are magnetically impacting everyone around us. And especially usually that's tied into our heart energy when we do that. And this isn't just about warm fuzzies and, love and, all that kind of stuff. It's really about this that love that I was talking about before, and that experience, and, in the meditation that I was having of that eternal divine love that is not the love that you see in the movies, but it's like more of this feeling that emanates, and it's so beautifully compassionate and expansive and loving that it just almost like wipes everything else out. And so when I think we get into that state within ourselves, when we are true to ourselves and we are in our power, being the most magnificent version of who we are, that has a ricochet effect around the planet, which is going through a state of transition and change and rebalancing at the moment.
Sure.
So I really feel like that's the gem. It's for everyone to be who they are in all of this. There's a lot of like lost kind of paths and diversions that we get going down, which all actually still legit lead to the same place, I think, in a way.
Yeah.
But,
We're all like I think Ram Dass says we're all helping each other get to that spot, right? We're all just holding each other's hands, going to the same place. Um,
yeah.
do you still have you ever found that lovingness, I guess that unit? I don't even know how to explain. I've never experienced that before. Have you done that sense or felt that sense?
So I've been really basically my latest journey in the last few years has been with heart technology. So, and I think I touched on it briefly in the back end of the book, but I get a lot of messages in my dreams, basically from high dimensional aspects of myself. And these three giant light beings came to me and basically told me that about heart technology. And I was like, but what about this meditation technique? And they were like, no. And I was like, but what about this healing? And they were like, no. And I was like, but what about this spiritual teaching? And they said, no. They said, it is all about heart technology. Heart technology is all you need. It only ever is about the heart. It has only ever been about the heart, and it will only ever be about the heart. So I was like, woke up going, so vivid, and I like clearly a message, and I was like, well, what the hell is heart technology? And so then, consulted Google as my first port of call, and it took me on this journey of what is heart technology. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Institute of Heart Math, but they have gotten into a whole bunch of independent research that they do. And, Joe Dispenza is now working a ton with it. So is Greg Braden. So is Dr. Bruce Lipton, like all those guys, and that transformation area. But at the time when this came up for me, no one was really talking about it. And I came up with the heart math a bit later, but essentially now it's all a huge part of their teaching. So I know I'm on the right path with this, and I'm actually just launching my heart technology course. But when you get into this technology that's within, it is not about, it has this amazing ability to bring you into your own frequency and the truth of who you are like never before. And the experience that I had in that meditation, that really blissful thing, because I've been going into so much heart coherence and getting into my heart consciously more often, I now start to experience these spontaneous states of bliss that somebody would potentially have to meditate 10 years to get to. But because I have been working consciously with this technology for a while now, I literally I'm not even meditating, I'm just doing whatever. I could be just like doing the laundry. And I will burst into this incredibly, and it's slightly different from the state that I experienced in the meditation, but it's like there's love bombs being thrown out of my being right out into the center of the universe. It's just like I'm just absorbed in this incredible state of eternal love. And it's a very, very much more visceral effect in my whole being. And it's really funny because I was sort of thinking, that's really funny. This is happening kind of on and off now for a while. I've been noticing it. And then, finding out that it's also happening to other people who are doing this style of work. And so it's, but it's not just about that state, which has an amazing effect on your whole biology when you get into that. I mean, it's bringing resonance to everything. It's a huge boost to your immune system. You're also just feeling so incredibly connected. And, this heart technology, it's really interesting because we can use it for so many different things. And it is where all of the answers are, and it's probably where all the things that I was searching for are directly located. You know, we all think it's from here, but it's actually in the brain, but it's not. It's from the heart, you know, and the heart actually sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart.
Mm-hmm.
So the brain is taking, you know, orders, so to speak, from the heart. And the heart also has it's got over 40,000 neurons in it.
Yeah.
It's got its own brain going on, just like we've discovered about the gut. You know, we're just really scratching the surface of all of this stuff. But the more I tune into this heart, and I use it for alchemy, and I use it as a portal, and I use it with visioning, and that is when I've started to tap into my own technology and figure out how that is working, it's opening up all sorts of other different stuff for me. And so it's like unlocking our own Rubik's Cube within, right? I feel like everybody has this individual divine blueprint, their own unique energy signature that they are operating in, that everyone's trying to figure out how it works. At least that's what I was trying to do this whole time on all of these adventures and stuff that I wrote about, you know, because what was working for everybody else wasn't working for me. And so I really understand now that the most power that we can have is in that unlocking of our own Rubik's Cube. And we have to do that with our own creativity, imagination, tuning in, getting, you know, having some time out and spending that time actually with ourselves and connecting and having a relationship with ourselves like never before, you know, like we would have with a relationship with someone we are absolutely in love with. It needs to be happening more here. And when we start focusing that, it just opens up all these other doors and avenues and dimensions and experiences. And I find that really interesting because it's coming more now directly related to that relationship with myself rather than anything else. You know, before I was in that meditation retreat, you know, so I was in amongst these other energies, whereas now I'm creating that from within me and experiencing that viscerally in my body and then also in my reality.
Yeah, I could tell definitely. I think my heart opened. I don't know if I think it was you reached out after, I don't know if it was Paul Selig episode or not.
It was,
Um,
yeah.
my heart definitely in that interview, I talk about it a little bit. Like I saw him in person and he was doing his thing, and like I just felt like a nice warm vibrate, like a nice, like I've never felt it before. I never felt that warmth, that just this feeling.
Mm,
And I think that was the start of, you know, my heart. They call it heart chakra or whatever you want to call it, heart source area. But it was like the spiritual awakening there, right? Like I just felt like that was the start of it, because like I've done Joe Dispenza's, like he talks about heart coherence, and
yeah.
so I've done some of his meditations, and I find very similar to you, how I'll just, you know, certain, like when I'm doing the podcast a lot of the times, like even now in this conversation, I'll just feel like a high, you know, it's all about vibrations. It's all about, you know,
Mm,
getting in coherence with, you know, the world frequencies and stuff like that. I'm doing a lot of research and energy, and a lot of that has to do with that. Um, and Bruce Lipton, I'm reading his book. What is it? I think it's The Biology of
biology
Belief or
of
something
belief.
like that.
Yeah, the biology of
And he
belief
talks
is
about that too. He talks about,
totally.
you know, it's definitely, there's something there. How do you, Joanna, get into that heart coherence? Is it through meditation? Is it like you say, you can be doing the laundry and you can feel the heart start vibrating and get warm and expand. But what is
Yeah.
your heart technology that you're, you know, give us some tips. I know you're getting ready to release it, right? But what
Yeah,
is it?
totally. Yeah. I, you know, when like the simplest way to connect into your heart is literally to draw your attention, which you can do anytime. You know, you could be driving and you could just bring your attention here. You could be, you know, in the loo, whatever. And but then you can layer up on that, you know, and you know, all coherences really, and everyone is teaching about coherences, that you bring your awareness to your heart, and then you slow down your breath so that your nervous system calms down into a sense of safety and security, you know, so you're breathing in, you know, and then breathing out really slowly, and then just doing a few breaths of that. And then all you're doing is, I mean, I always love putting my hand on my heart because it just, I immediately feel that connection, you know, and that just helps me. But and then you're just literally fostering these uplifting feelings. And so sometimes, you know, you can think about a little baby animal. It could be a little fluffy duckling that just brings your heart joy, and you tune into that. Or it could your favorite pet that you ever had, or, you know, a favorite person, or a favorite beach or place, or whatever it is. And you're just fostering uplifting feelings within your being. So, and you can choose to breathe in expansive vibrational words like peace and love and ease and compassion and respect, and, you know, any of that. You know, there's so many kind of different ways you can do it, but it's literally just about breathing, tuning in, and creating those feelings within yourself. And so when you do that, it brings the body into homeostasis, and it brings it into coherence. And so it just, the more you do it, it has a cumulative effect, actually. So I think that's why I spontaneously burst into these states. And it's not even after I've been doing anything like that. It's just a literal spontaneous out of nowhere thing that happens. And so, you know, I kind of love that it just sneaks up on you, and that
Yeah.
it kind of appear here and there.
That nice
But
little surprise, you know, a little pick me up while you're folding your underwear.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Uh,
Joe Dispenza does a lot with heart coherence, but he does a lot with like creating your reality too. Um,
mm.
what is your thought on that? Do you think that you can do that like through these meditations where you can, I guess you can call it law of attraction, or what, I don't know what else you can call it, but creating,
Yeah,
besides creating your reality.
it's like working in the quantum field, you know, and
Yeah,
it's working
quantum
with everything.
field.
And it's just working with everything. It's like based on the principle that everything is energy and vibration. And I've always felt from the littlest, tiniest age that what my energy, what I'm bringing into the world, is coming back to meet me in some kind of way. I've just always felt and understood, even though I didn't understand the science behind it at the time. And
Hmm.
I could never quite, and I did go into a lot of self-judgment along the path about that, because I didn't really understand that I needed to sort of take a step back. And it was just, you know, signals in my reality giving me a pointer and a redirection, rather than me like, oh, I've mucked up again, you know. But I 100% believe that, I mean, we are these powerful energy beings. I mean, just us living day to day, you know, not doing anything fantastical or amazing, is literally creating stuff as we go. I mean, otherwise we would just be in a constant state of, you know, a static state, wouldn't
Yeah.
we? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we 100% are doing it, whether we're conscious of it or not. And I think we're getting to the point where we're really fine tuning how that works, because I don't really buy into this whole like trend of manifestation, to be honest with you. I think we're already natural creators. So when we get ourselves into a state of alignment, everything just comes in to meet us that we need. We're not actually having to chase after or control or try and make anything happen. Because if you think about it, if you're trying to manifest something, you're coming from a lack vibe, you're coming from a form of lack behind that. So it doesn't make sense that you can necessarily meet up with what you're trying to manifest, in a way, because there's something faulty in that whole teaching. So I don't think it's necessarily being talked about in the right way yet, you know. And there's been a lot of like, it's another one of those sort of red herrings I was referring to. I think it's a bit of a misnomer in how that exactly works, because, you know, I really feel like when you're in complete state of trust and you are in alignment and you're connected to yourself, exactly what you need for where you're at on a vibrational and energetic level is coming in to meet you. And it might be coming in to help you see something about yourself that needs to be transformed and changed, or it might be coming in to celebrate how in an incredible alignment you are in this respect, or whatever it is. But it's this constant ebb and flow that is signaling to us, and it's like a feedback system. It's our live reality feed that is giving us information about where we're at, you know. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's so fun, because you're like a detective in your reality, you know. Like I always used to love those like Indiana Jones films and stuff, and I still feel
Yeah.
like my life is a little bit like that, you know. I'm still like basically living out my life as the female version of Indy, but
That's awesome. Where's your whip at? I'm sure you got it somewhere.
yeah, 100%. I mean, you think about
um, but yeah, I mean, he talks about like you said, like if you're trying to manifest, if you come at it like at a like out of lack, right? Like I don't think you ever manifest it, but like what Joe talks about is like already act like you have it, and
yeah,
then if you're coming from that place, then somehow the science, and he talks about that in his books, where the body, the field will automatically, not automatically, but more than likely bring it to you because everything is pushing you. Like you've already, if you already act like you have something, and you're expressing that through your body and through the field, then it like it like tricks itself somehow. I don't know how it tricks the field, but it starts bringing those things to you.
Yeah,
I don't know,
absolutely.
but it's pretty powerful. I mean, he legitimately believes this stuff, and he talks about it. And to put his like I his first book, I don't know if you know this, his very first book, I don't know if he was a doctor or not, but he was inspired by the Ramtha books. Are you
Oh,
familiar with
really?
those at all?
Yeah, like one fell off the shelf at my mum years and years ago. Like,
Are you serious?
yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah.
crazy.
Like she was on holiday in Fiji, and this book, she was in the like a resort, like library or whatever, and this book just fell off the shelf in front of her, and it was a Ramtha book.
Well, he talks about when he was laid up because he was hurt. He had gotten hit. He was doing a bike race or something. He got hit by a vehicle, and when he was in, because he was, it was controversial about him getting the surgery, getting the pins and everything in his back, and he was in the hospital. I don't know if he was in the hospital bed. I'm guessing he was not in the hospital bed. He was probably at his house because in the room that he was at, there was a bookshelf with a white book, and it was a
Mm.
Ramtha book, and he picks it up, and he was very tied closely to that. I guess the organization, and I don't know what happened, but I don't know if he used to teach there or what, but yeah, it's pretty. Read his first book because it's
I
very
didn't know
interesting.
that actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating because I've really come to a place where I sort of feel like what I have been bringing through in my work in all this is really for the next phase that we're all going into as humanity, which is really identifying with ourselves as the sovereign being, as the authority over everything, including spiritual beings, included. And I just always am very conscious to make I call in my mastery. I call in the angelic part of myself. I call forth all of those different aspects of myself when I'm working energetically with my own field. I don't call it as other beings coming in or connecting with other things because I feel like that's disempowering to us as well. And, when I shifted that, it shifted a lot for me. And I think we're, as a species, we're moving from, and especially in the spiritual community, we're really moving into really all of the ways that when we claim sovereignty, it really empowers us on a much more broader extent in our field and what we're doing. And it's really um, the next phase is just all of us really, really, really getting tight with the power that we do contain in what we are, and doing less of all of the disempowering things that we're just unconscious of and don't even know we're doing all the time. But I'm very, I'm always been quite conscious to, and I think that's why I was never getting literally, I don't know, like names or connections with any of those things because I was at this level of consciousness that wasn't aligning with that as an outdated model for me for where I was at. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of in
Well,
a
the Rantha book like kind of freaked me out a little bit because it was like not the channeling stuff is it's fine. Like I don't, it doesn't bother me. I'm very open minded to that. But like the idea that he based the Rantha in the early messages are like you are God, you are God. You should be basically worshiping yourself. Like, and that was very uncomfortable for me. And I think it's uncomfortable for a lot of people.
but
Because
that's what I mean about sovereignty. It is that exact idea, right? So and it's funny because my mum in the 80s, when this book fell off the shelf, then she's steadily going around. And my dad is like the business guy, not into spirituality at all, eye roll every 5 minutes of it. And, she's at dinner parties that he's hosting for his, colleagues at work or whatever that she has to impress. And she's like, oh, we're God and blah, blah, blah. And you can tell that went down like a bucket of cold sick. I mean, like she was spouting all this stuff. And it was really, really controversial at the time. And it still makes people uncomfortable. Let's just
yeah,
say. Um,
yeah, you can kind
but
of hint to it. Like you can kind of be like, all right, so I can kind of get with the idea, or like, all right, yeah, I know the higher power, but you like some religions are like you can't go over that threshold. Like you can't even identify with that source. Like it is blasphemy. It is like the highest treason. Like to even
Mm.
think that, right? But even in the Bible, it says, you know, you were created in the
In
image
the
of
image of
God.
God.
So,
Yep.
you know,
And
like,
that's why for me this heart technology is super important, because that is the connection to the divine is here. It's not in the crown chakra, and the connection to the divine isn't in the third eye. It's actually coming from here. Is our That's where I feel my spark is. And when you just that takes you and connects you to that divine intelligence, you know, and that is the part of us that encompasses everything. That's why all the answers are already there. So it's really interesting when you start to spend more time doing that, because when you're connecting with that spark, that's the fullness and the magnificence and everything. It's just that we are aligned with other
no.
things through, because through our human
Well,
experience
that's what
essentially.
Paul Selig in his book, you know, the second coming of Christ. That's what the guides talk about. Is the second coming of Christ isn't, you know, him physically coming here. It's the him coming, opening up that, rolling back that rock of your heart,
Mm-hmm.
right, and coming through your heart, and you loving as Christ loved. That's the hardest part. How do you love your neighbor like you love yourself? It's
Yeah.
realizing that your neighbor is you,
Yeah.
essentially, right? Like we are a part of that. We are all. It's like, I don't know. Like Ram Dass says, like, we are all God in drag, basically. And, you know, think about this. Like, just think about, you know, every human is just, you know, I come here in this suit of Trey, and, you know, you and I agree to play parts. You know, I'll play Trey and you'll play Joanna, and we'll act
All
like
right.
we're just playing this in this huge role. And, you know, I'll pretend if you pretend, you know, like
Yeah. But I
this.
think the whole process is a triggering of remembrance, right?
Mhm.
So I really, all of it is just uncovering the layers to get what we're talking about, which is the truth of who we are, which is buried underneath all the stuff, right? So we're just getting the layers out of the way. And the more we do that, the more we remember that part of ourselves, and the more we start to embody it,
It's
and then
beautiful.
it
Yeah.
ricochets out into everybody else. And I think that's whole part of the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been amazing. How can people find out more about you, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can connect with me through my website, which is at joannawalden.com. Or I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at I am Joanna Walden, so you can catch me there too. The book is available on Amazon and on all the platforms, really. I mean, it's kind of like really broadly out there, and the audiobook's about to launch as well. So,
Wait for
yeah,
that. I followed you on Instagram, so I'm definitely a huge
yeah.
fan, huge supporter.
Uh, oh, thank you. No, I really appreciate you having me on the show. It's been so fun to talk to you. I love talking to like-minded people and having a bit of a jam on all this stuff, because it's just always fun. And I think that are igniting in each other, and sparking off different codes within us that are
Sure.
activating and that kind of stuff. So
Coherence, right? We're getting on that frequency.
indeed, yeah.
Last question, kind of important. What do you want your legacy to be?
Ooh, my legacy. Um, I mean, I just love to, and with everything I'm doing, I just would love to inspire people to courageously connect with the deeper part of themselves, so they can bring the best of themselves to this world.
Mm,
I think
beautiful.
that's really it for me.
This has been awesome. Make sure you guys go pick up her book, The Inside Hustle. Joanna, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.